Hey everyone, we're continuing in our Incarnate series as we are now in the month of December, and we are looking at all these passages in Scripture and moving us toward the day of Christmas and all the things that were going on, moving us toward that. And some of that's historical, some of that's just strictly devotional, some of that's just thoughtful. But today we are in Isaiah chapter 61, looking at verses 1 through 3. I'm going to trust that as you read this, you can make the connection yourself as to what this has to do with Christmas, and you can see this and identify this easily as a messianic prophecy. But I want you to pay attention to the verbs in here. Pay attention to the reasons why this passage is here. That this is all about the year of the Lord's favor and the arrival of the promised Messiah as the favor of God. And we're actually told several different reasons why that happens. One, to bring good news. Another, to proclaim liberty. Another, to proclaim the Lord's favor. Another, to grant or to bless those who are mourning. And it's the idea that there is a message, that there is a hope that is coming, and it's packaged with this arrival of this Messiah. So hopefully that's clear to what it has to do with Christmas. I want to tell you a story that's probably going to take a little bit longer. It's just a little bit longer devotion today. But I told you already that I'm a big, super huge fan of Christmas music. I love the music. I love everything about it because not just reminds me of the season, but because it proclaims a gospel that is such a unique way that we get to any other time of the year. But one song I want to talk about, give you a little bit of history on, is the 12 Days of Christmas. Now, you and I probably hear that song. We don't think anything remotely spiritual about it. We hear some guy who loves some woman, and so he's bringing these gifts for her, and there's 12 days of Christmas, and some of us have even used that in our own families and things like this. Well, I want to tell you the history of this song. Back in the 16th century, in the British Empire, there's only one acceptable Christian denomination, and that was the Church of England. And the Church of England was actually sponsored by the king or the monarchy. And it was illegal to practice any other denomination of Christian religion or Christian church. And that includes Catholicism. I know it's really hard for us to think about that, but it was illegal for you to be a practicing Catholic in the British Empire in the 16th century. You couldn't say anything, practice anything, pray anything, meet anything, or demonstrate any kind of symbol that showed your religion is connected to the Catholic Church. So they went underground, much like the persecuted church does, and they were underground for such a long time, and they were still very, very vibrant, but underground. No one knew about this. And then they were running into an issue that one generation was dying off, and another one was being raised up. And so how do we move this? How do we pass this on without doing the illegal things to our kids? And so they wrote this song called 12 Days of Christmas. And it was all about really a coded language to proclaim the birth of Christ. And it's 12 days is what everyone gets messed up in, and it has nothing to do with anything. It's just the time from the birth of Christ to the arrival of the Magi bringing gifts. That's all it means. But let me go through this really, really quick, what each of these 12 days were coded to mean. We have the partridge in a pear tree. The partridge was considered a bird of courage and devotion, and as the mother partridge lures enemies away from the defenseless chicks, so does Jesus' sacrifice, and then the pear tree is a representative of the cross. Two turtle doves represents the Old and New Testaments that proclaim the arrival of the Messiah. Three French hens. A French hen was a very expensive food that was actually only really a meal fit for a king. And so the three are the gifts for the king that are brought for the baby. That's the newborn king. Four calling birds represents the four gospels, trumpeting Jesus' story, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Five golden rings represents the Torah, or the first 5 books of the Old Testament, known as the Book of the Law. 6 geese a-laying is representative of coded language for the 6 days of creation, and the egg represents a new life or a new creation, and so there's 6 of them, six days of creation. 7 swans a-swimming. A swan is considered the most graceful and beautiful fowl of England, And so that there's 7 of them is actually connection to Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8, which tells of 7 different gifts of the Spirit. 8 maids a milking. A maid is the lowest job that you could possibly have in England. So Christ is sent as a servant to the lowly. And it is also reflective of the 8 Beatitudes that we find in Matthew chapter 5. 9 ladies dancing, fruits of the Spirit. There are 9 of them that are listed that cause us or move us into action. And 10 lords a leaping are representative of the 10 commandments. And a lord is someone who is just and honorable and actually responsible for executing the law. So 10 commandments from a just and honorable position. 11 pipers piping. There were 12 disciples minus, or 12 apostles minus Judas. So there were 11 of them who took the message to the world, who piped their pipes. And 12 drummers drumming is actually a connection, a coded language for what's known as the Apostles' Creed, which is a Catholic confessional, and there's a dozen elements in there. So I say all this because this was their way of proclaiming the message. So my devotional thought for you, as you've hung in with me this long, is how are you going to proclaim the arrival of this newborn king? And we have the freedom to do that out loud. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? And I promise you, you will never listen to that song the same again, because it is a coded language for the proclamation of the Christian message. You all have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you very soon.